you, and good afternoon, everyone. I think we just heard about data as a digital currency. Now, we are talking about governance of this digital boom. So we know that India is on a path to a Viksit Bharat, and we cannot be a Viksit Bharat without the digital innovation that is going on, and the pace of digital innovation is huge. It is expected that the digital economy is going to be 1 trillion very soon. And we don't know, I don't want to put a timeline because the way the acceleration is happening, we cannot put a timeline to when this 1 trillion will be achieved. Now, as the digital economy grows and business grows through digital, obviously it leads to challenges, and these challenges are related to innovation and how innovation gets concentrated. There are challenges of trust. We just heard in the previous panel that Alexa sitting in our bedroom and listening, so and whether there is trust in that. It also leads to challenges around market access. It leads to challenges of the businesses having a kind of a level playing field, especially small entrepreneurial businesses. And as the theme of the conclave is Digital Bharat. Now, so we are talking not about even the urban areas, but it's about inclusion and the businesses that are not at the heart of this city, but in Bharat. Essentially the rural tier 2, tier 3 towns. So given that context, we are getting into this discussion on governing this space, governing the innovation, allowing level playing field. And for that, we have two of our panelists here who I think are most qualified to speak on this subject. Dr. Arvind Gupta, he is the founder and CEO of Digital India Foundation. And of course, Srinath Chakravarthy, he is the Senior Vice President in NISG. So with that background, I'll get into a kind of a segment of the discussion, and I'm mindful of the time that we have. So given that India's digital economy is to reach 1 trillion, and this was stated by even this year or the next year, and this is being driven by internet access, fintech innovations, booming startups. We hear every day a new startup, or maybe more than one startup every day. So, Dr. Gupta, I'll first ask you that as this expands so rapidly, what should be the first order priority for the government? So is it innovation that the government should be propelling? Is it security? Is the focus should be on inclusion or ensuring global competitiveness of our business? So if we ask you that what should be the first order priority for the government, what it should be?
So thank you, Financial Express, for having me. Thank you, Ranen, for asking these questions. And of course, my esteemed co-alum from BHU, Srinath, for being on this panel. Yeah, I think your question is wrong.
Okay.
And I'm going to be frankly very provocative. Having been associated with Digital India from the day it was launched on 1st July 2015, and hopefully till the time it transforms to, to being a global Digital India, I've seen all parts of it. Why your question is wrong, Ranen? You work for one of the world's biggest consulting firms, and I have the reason I wear many hats. One of them is as a professor, and the why I'm saying that is this is not the time for India to live in our world. The way you have framed your question is, and I'm not saying your question is wrong per se, but what I'm saying is that the framing of it as that we need to do this or this or this and reprioritize 1, 2, 3. You have to understand, this government does not work in this world of ours. We work in a world which is all at once. We work in a world where the Prime Minister, who is the CEO of Digital India, I call him, is trying to do 100 things together. You don't get to have a choice on fintech innovation, startup India, semiconductors being made in India, and the AI mission. There is no question of priority there. They're all being run at equal priority, with equal governance, with equal responsibility, and in equal tasking and asking for updates on a very regular basis. So it is. I think we've stopped living in this world of sequential, number one. When it comes to the whole point of digital economy, there are so many pillars that Indian digital economy is built on. Policy, I'll come to last. Why policy has become very important is because, see, earlier and until today, innovation happens in the gray areas of policy. And as and when policy makers catch up to those innovations, they figure out, oh, we need to find a way to give policy clarity, to remove the gray areas, to remove the disparity between online and offline, for example. A lot of regulations keep coming about. But I can tell you one thing from experience, India has perhaps the fastest policy making right now in this environment. You had Mr. Duggal, again, renowned in the field of data privacy, security. He was talking about this whole thing, whether it's too late. Sometimes, perceptionally policy making, you think it's delayed for some reason. But we also live in a global world of geopolitics happening. These are now tools and instruments for negotiations with the world. You have to understand the whole world has shifted to technology as one of the biggest negotiating point today. The US-China trade deal is dependent on TikTok. You've heard of that, I'm sure. We banned TikTok in 2020. America is realizing 5 years from when we banned TikTok that TikTok has elements of state control and algorithmic biasing. So we are very fast, but there are certain decisions and that's where the trust in our government and our leadership should be there, is being made where, first of all, it's happening all at once. And if there is something that is policy is taking time, it has global ramifications, it has implications in geopolitics, and that is taken into consideration before we announce something. So, lastly, a very important thing that we said, while we all can represent Digital India and talk about Digital India, really the true story of Digital India is Digital Bharat. 950 million internet users in India today. In 2014, it was 140 million. The cost of internet at that point in time was, in my opinion, 300 rupees per GB of data transfer. Today, I don't think so anybody even knows, 200 rupees for unlimited data per month. So we have come a long way. We are the cheapest internet in the world. We are the highest consumer of content in the world. 950 million people, no other geography has that many amount of free internet users. Free does not mean free internet, but internet in a free world. The Chinese users are literally living in their own walled garden. So it's a very different world we live in. And this growth has been driven by Bharat. Today, the consumption of Delhi vis-a-vis 50 kilometers from here is very different. And I think the government is very cognizant of, when it makes policies, it doesn't make policies for people like you and me. It makes policies for, you talk about the whole, and we can in the second half talk about the digital public infrastructure. But I just want to use this forum and assure you of a couple of things, that it's happening all at once. Startup ecosystem is the fastest growing startup ecosystem in the world. Our outreach, Srinath is sitting here. He can tell you how many countries are talking to them for implementing India's Aadhaar and UPI in their countries. So all the things that you said are all happening together. Indian startups are going global. We are attracting capital. We are the frugal capital of the world. 1700, 1800 GCCs operate in India, global competency centers. So, gone are the days that we were only dependent on H-1B visas. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. And as you rightly mentioned, and the question was a bit provocative, that we cannot live in this space of innovation and adoption and the pace of digital changes and the things that it changes every day. So we cannot actually cannot rely on doing or focusing on only one thing, and it's not a world of or, but it's a world of and. So thanks for that perspective. Now, so Srinath, I'll turn to you. So given this pace of, firstly, the adoption as well as the pace of change and the dynamism that is there, now there clearly is always a risk of exclusion, right? So there is a risk of exclusion, and more so for the Bharat. And as Dr. Gupta said, that the policy making is more keeping Bharat in mind and not you and me, and which is rightly so. So because we can afford to opt out, but the Bharat, we cannot say that Bharat can also opt out. So given that, what are the risks of exclusion that you are seeing from where you are sitting at a vantage point? And you are looking at the digital public infrastructure adoption here, as well as taking it globally. So, and we have collaborated on a few of them, but what are the risks that you see?
Thank you, Ranen, and thank you also to Financial Express for inviting me. Let me first answer Dr. Gupta's question about, we are taking the Aadhaar framework, and I would put it more like the experience we have gained in building Aadhaar, not directly porting Aadhaar, because we are the largest provider of digital IDs in the whole world. And the entire Aadhaar ecosystem cannot be just taken and dropped on some other countries. They don't need that entire infrastructure. But what countries value is India's experience in building it, the lessons learned. So it's really our human capital that we are exporting. So at NISG, to answer Dr. Gupta's question, we are working with Ministry of External Affairs. They've signed close to 18 MOUs with various countries, and we've started work with 2 of them. The first one, which is a little more advanced, we are building Sri Lanka's national ID. They don't have a national ID. So NISG is working with MEA to actually design a national ID for that country. And we're also just beginning work with Myanmar. And there are many more to follow. And like I said, they are actually attracted by our experience in building it and the lessons learned. Now, to answer your question, Ranen, what Dr. Gupta has already talked about, Digital India, and I fully echo the sentiment that started 10 years ago. I think our Prime Minister had a wonderful vision, just coining the term Digital India and then giving a push along multiple fronts. I mean, if you think about connectivity, infrastructure, building the digital assets that build that layer, I don't think a better push could have been given. And in the last 10 years, tremendous strides have been made. Some of it may not be as visible, but I think more than 2 lakh gram panchayats are now connected. Close to 7 lakh kilometers of optical fiber have been laid. So a lot of the backbone has been built, and there are a number of programs under Digital India, and we don't have time to go through all of them, but that have really built that layer where the government is reaching out to citizens. But still, there is a lot of inclusivity issues. There's a lot of people who are not yet able to take advantage of it. One primary factor is language. We all sit here and we assume that it's all in English. All the apps are in English. It doesn't work that way. A lot of the people who are digitally not literate, maybe not even literate, have difficulty accessing these services that government is rolling out. So one initiative on that from the Government of India, Ministry of IT, is of course the Bhashini initiative. Some of you may be familiar with it. This is basically an AI-based language translator. It goes voice to text, and it can take text and recreate voice from it. And you can also translate not just from English to Hindi or backwards, but from any Indian language to any other Indian language. You can go Tamil to Gujarati, Bengali to anything, whatever you want. So this is really slowly becoming a game changer in terms of the accessibility of the services. The other is maybe not talked about as much, but a lot of the difficulty in accessing services is the usability. A lot of people, maybe not in this group, but maybe in rural areas, people who are using it for the first time, they go on a website, they go on an app, and they're not able to find the information. It's not intuitive. The workflow is not intuitive, the information is not easily available, and then they give up. This has to change. So for this, the UX 4G initiative that Government of India is rolling out, it's not as visible, not well talked about, but it is setting the frameworks of how these apps and websites need to be designed. Website design had the GIGW, some of you may be familiar with it, that's the Government of India, I forget the full form. It's the framework for which websites are to be developed. So some of these initiatives are making the inclusivity much better. I'll just end with one thought on this. The infrastructure is there. In the last 10 years, tremendous digital infrastructure has been built. Now it has to move to a level where our endpoints and outcomes have to be realized using this infrastructure. Very quick example, we have the RTE, not RTI, RTE, Right to Education Act, where all children in India are guaranteed education up to the age of 14, right? If you go to any state and ask them, how are you doing with this act? How many kids up to 14 are not in school? Most of the states will not be able to tell you that. If you ask them, okay, at least tell me who are in school, that they'll be reasonably able to tell you. It's much better now than it was earlier. We have a lot of data online, data enrollment, etc., but they'll not be able to tell you who's not enrolled. So if you think about it, what is actually missing here? It's not very difficult to track it. You have to track the life cycle of the citizen. So you have to know, right, the birth data, right, when they are born, you have to track it from that point. Then you will know that when they get to a school-going age, and you can match it with your school enrollment data. But who is the custodian of birth data? Municipalities in urban areas and gram panchayats, etc., in rural areas. These entities are not talking to the Department of Education. This connectivity is lacking. So I think it's in that direction that this has to go, because ultimately it is the societal benefits that we seek. There's no point building all this infrastructure if we're not able to actually connect the dots and lead to that thing. And I think that is where I'm very confident that that is where we are headed. And I think we've reached a maturity level where the infrastructure is all in place and will continue to build, but this is what will take it to the next level.
No, thank you, Srinath, and I think I'm conscious of time. So just an extension of that. So while we have done the infrastructure and people are getting onboarded onto it, and you rightly mentioned that the focus should be an outcome, but there are concerns on the trust and security, right, aspects, which we discussed, the previous panel also discussed. But when these designs are happening, if you could dwell that is in the designs, is the trust and security, how you're keeping that as a kind of top layer, so that we kind of prevent any misuse of the systems. And I know how in Aadhaar such layers have been put, but you must have experienced these challenges. So any challenges or any examples, any experiences that you've seen on the trust and security aspects of this development?
Yeah, of course, privacy by design is probably an important tenet, and that was mentioned in the last panel as well. Yes, I think there's a greater awareness now that all systems must incorporate privacy and security. There was a lot of talk on the DPDP Act that was there in the last panel, so I won't repeat that, but I will mention this, that the thrust of this is really that of data, data anonymization and data minimalization. It was briefly mentioned in the last panel. A lot of times government, and I can talk specifically about government since we work with them, they collect a lot more data than they actually need. This is a problem. Anytime you have a form that you fill out, there's usually much more data than is actually needed for that particular purpose. It's more the attitude that somebody's in front of me, I'm going to take whatever I can get, because later on, I don't know if I can get to this individual, right? So with that, you're increasing the possibility, increasing the risk of data breaches. And so this is one important concept. And I think from the system design itself, this has to be taken into account. Not only collecting what you need, but consent, which is going to be very important in the DPDP Act, is something that can be revoked also, which was mentioned in the last panel. How are you going to actually adopt to that? We're talking to oil marketing companies a lot, some of the PSUs, and they collect a lot of LPG connection data, and it's collected in a variety of formats, some on paper, some on Excel sheets, some on apps, some on this, some on that. And really, after this DPDP Act comes in, they have to ensure that this is actually secure and that this is not breached. I just want to mention one thing. There was a talk by Mr. Dugal that the penalties are very severe. I think the top penalty is very severe. But I think there will be a reasonableness that will be done by the Data Protection Board. It's not that everybody will get a 50 crore penalty. It's not that way. The issue here is, particularly for some of you smaller companies who are looking at this privacy angle, is that, and I know the larger companies are facing this, that if you are collecting the data and you're storing the data, generally you're outsourcing it as far as the storage. You're using a cloud provider, you're using other kinds of data storage, which is a different entity. Our DPDP Act puts the entire responsibility on the fiduciary, which is you, not on your data processor. This is where our DPDP Act differs from the GDPR, where there's equal responsibility on both. This has caused some problems because I was in a consultation session on this with the ministry and some stakeholders. There was a lady from SBI who said, SBI, one of our largest banks, who said that we use whatever, AWS, Azure, et cetera, et cetera. The problem is this entire layer is all foreign companies. These are not Indian companies as well. And yet, if there is a breach, it is the fiduciary that is responsible. So all the smaller, the MSMEs, et cetera, you will have to pay attention to this in terms of your providers and ensure that your agreements with them are strong and are reinforced with suitable language, both legal as well as the ISO certifications, et cetera, that will protect you in case of this breach. Yeah.
So thanks, Srinath, for that. So, Dr. Gupta, but we know that the risk of exclusion is real, right? So, what do you think is the role of governance? So, while fines is one aspect of it, but what's the role of governance in all this to ensure that there is a level playing field? And have you seen certain examples from where you said, where this was being breached and where the interventions happened from a governance perspective, which worked well? So if you could share some perspectives on that.
Great. While there is exclusion that happens in digitally, and I'll speak in Hindi for a reason, because it's Digital Bharat. तो वो उसका कारण बहुत बारी ये होता है कि हमारे प्रोडक्ट्स या तो बहुत कॉम्प्लिकेटेड होते हैं, बट जो डिजिटल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इंडिया का बना है, चाहे वो यूपीआई हो, चाहे आधार हो, वो तो इंक्लूजन को लेकर बना है. उसमें लैंग्वेज की हल्के हल्के करके सारी लैंग्वेजेस में जा रहा है. बट आप दो एग्जांपल लीजिए. हमारे पास, and because you asked a question on level playing field, I'm assuming this level playing field is between people, the digitally more literate and the digitally less literate. आप एक फास्टैग का एग्जांपल लीजिए. फास्टैग कौन इस्तेमाल करता है इंडिया में? मोस्टली लॉजिस्टिक्स, ड्राइविंग, दे हैव ऑल अंडरस्टूड हाउ फास्टैग वर्क्स. एंड फास्टैग में क्या होता है, अगर आप जाते हैं किसी टोल पर तो डिजिटली फास्टैग के थ्रू 50 रुपये देते हैं, अगर कैश देना पड़ता है तो 100 रुपये देना पड़ता है. दैट यूज़र इज़ 98% यूजिंग फास्टैग. he or she doesn't want to use non-FASTag mechanism. Automatically inclusion आ गई. इसमें रोल क्या हुआ? गवर्नमेंट का रोल ये रहा कि we created the right nudges and policies कि you keep pushing yourselves to digital. उसमें उसकी fuel saving. So the message I am trying to say, Ranen, is very interesting. इंडिया में जहाँ efficiency आती है, भारत में, sorry, let me correct it again. भारत में जहाँ efficiency मिलती है, टेक्नोलॉजी का इस्तेमाल लोग उससे जल्दी करने लगते हैं. उसके साथ उसकी प्रॉब्लम्स भी आती हैं। डिजिटल फ्रॉड की बात होती है, फाइनेंशियल फ्रॉड की बात होती है, साइबर क्राइम की बात होती है, बट दैट इज, आई थिंक दैट हैपन्स बिकॉज देयर इज अ बिगर चैलेंज ऑफ लिटरेसी। तो जो इंक्लूजन का पॉइंट है, सिस्टम्स आर well designed for inclusion, unless they're, as Srinath said, very complicated or don't have the language support. We have, आप यूपीआई का बहुत अच्छा एग्जाम्पल है, पूरे विश्व में यूपीआई की प्रशंसा होती है, बट आज तक इस कमरे में जितने लोग बैठे हुए हैं, इनको जब यूपीआई चालू हुआ था और आज तक आपको स्मार्टफोन नहीं चाहिए यूपीआई में ट्रांजैक्शन करने के लिए। हाउ मेनी पीपल नो दिस? यू एक्चुअली डोंट नीड अ स्मार्टफोन। हाउ कैन यू डू इट, सुनील? You can do it through USSD. And till today is supported. You actually now call an IVR number. So अगर आपके पास एक, फिर एक UPI ने एक innovation लाई for inclusion. It's called UPI Lite. बिना इंटरनेट कनेक्टिविटी के भी चल जाता है. So innovation keeps happening to ensure that usage goes better, deeper. हमारे साथ challenge कुछ और आता है कि the bigger challenge is, जो यूपीआई के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में आप कह सकते हैं, द टू बिग प्रोवाइडर्स, श्रीनाथ alluded टू इट। आज इंडिया में यूपीआई के 3 सबसे बड़े प्लेटफॉर्म्स हैं। यूपीआई तो इंडिया का प्लेटफॉर्म है, बट यूपीआई के 3 बिग एप्लीकेशंस हैं, या आप उसको जो यूसेज में आती हैं, गूगल, फ़ोनपे और पेटीएम। नंबर 1, 2, 3 यही माने जाते हैं। नंबर 1 गूगल, किसको ओनरशिप है हमें पता है उसकी, सारा डेटा और जा रहा है उनके पास। दूसरा फ़ोनपे की ओनरशिप जानते हैं कौन है? वॉलमार्ट, एब्सोल्युटली राइट आंसर। पेटीएम अब इंडियन हो गया, स्टॉक एक्सचेंज पे लिस्ट हो गया, पहले उसकी ओनरशिप कहीं और की थी। नाउ व्हेन आई एम सेइंग दिस, होता क्या है कि द अमाउंट ऑफ कैपिटल दीज बिग कंपनीज आर एबल टू पंप इन टू एक्सपैंड द मार्केट, दैट इज द चैलेंज दैट द गवर्नमेंट हैज टू फेस। नाउ टू ड्राइव इंक्लूजन, यू समटाइम्स आर allowing these platforms to grow, but अगर inclusion नहीं होती, फिर financial inclusion नहीं होती, payments pervasive नहीं होती, so that's the chicken and egg, and those are the tough decisions somebody has to always keep making at all points in time. So I think finally UPI has replaced MasterCard and Visa card in India for all payments, and it continues to do so because it's not non-rent seeking. We don't charge on UPI, and that's why it's very important. But and the data is stored in India. But there are still some issues of data getting, other people using it, more Indian companies. So, but this is a constant endeavor to solve for that, to make sure that the level playing field is between Indian and the global players. But for the consumer, it is very level playing field.
No, thank you, and I see that the time is up. So thanks for those insights. And जैसा आपने कहा कि it is ये inclusion and adoption means both have to go hand in hand. But I think some summary of the discussions from a governance perspective, if I have to do, so it is this innovation, inclusion. That also cannot be a or; it has to be an and we have to put the guardrails so that the Bharat is kind of protected and they are made inclusive. The policy dynamism has to be there because things are changing very fast. The other thing that Srinath mentioned is that we need to continue to focus on outcomes, that what is the outcome we are trying to achieve. Yes, there could be a little bit of a risk in the interim of exclusion or privacy, etc., but the guardrails have to be continued to be put around it. Consent, I think, is a word that was used. So consent becomes very important. But obviously, person who is giving a consent has to understand for what the consent is being given. That is very important. So because people just click without thinking, even we click without thinking. And I think the other thing was that if the right incentives and the right disincentives are in place, and if it is an efficiency of business or cost of doing business that goes lower, then adoption will go higher. And I think Dr. Gupta gave an example of FASTag, the adoption. So I think those are the messages that is coming out from this. Governance is not easy. Policy making is not easy, and especially in the dynamism that is needed in policy making. So I think with that, the time's up. And thank you, Dr. Gupta and Srinath, for this great insights. I'm sure that we would have got the at least a reflection of the governance challenges that are being handled at the apex level in Digital India Foundation as well as in NISG. So thank you so much.
Thank you.